I was playing some Chopin, as you do, and I came across a curious chord progression with a distinctly epic sound. What struck me about it was how much it seemed like the circle of fifths. I had a hunch that it passed through every key center without repeating, even though only the circle of fifths and the chromatic circle can do so by a constant interval. As I dug deeper, I uncovered a circular chord progression that not only passes through every major and minor chord without repeating, but touches on many topics in music theory, including the circle of fifths, jazz chord extensions, and the super ultra hyper mega meta Lydian scale. I'm Polychord Productions, and this is the epic progression, the longest chord progression in music theory. So what is this progression? It's a chain of perfect cadences, each one separated by a gap that alternates between a major and minor third. As such, it forms a pattern that repeats every 4 chords. Let's break the full progression into these 4 chord chunks and analyze one to see what gives it its smoothness and character in terms of harmony and counterpoint. Our starting chord is G major, which we'll consider to be the progression's tonal center at the moment. The next chord is the F sharp 7th chord, which resolves to B minor, modulating to a new tonal center. Already, there's something interesting going on. The F sharp 7 chord isn't found in G major. It's chromatic, and yet this jump doesn't seem unnatural at all. It makes more sense when you think of B minor as the initial tonal center, instead of G major. The G major chord then becomes the 6th of B minor. F sharp 7 is 5-7, and B minor is 1. All chords diatonic to B minor. The progression they form, 6-5-1, is what gives this progression its characteristically heroic sound. In terms of counterpoint, the voice leading is very parsimonious, meaning that each voice doesn't move far between chords. Between the first two, the bass moves down a semitone from G to F sharp, the tenor moves up a whole tone from D to E, the alto up an augmented second from G to A sharp, and the soprano up a whole tone from B to C sharp. Chord 2, F sharp 7, then resolves pretty normally to a B minor chord. The transition between chords 3 and 4 is similar, but even smoother. All 4 voices move by step. Chord 4 resolves to D major, a major chord. Because our 4-chord chunk starts with and resolves to a major chord, we can treat it as a fragment and form a sequence by chaining a bunch of them together. You may remember that the interval between the beginning and the end of a fragment determines which tonal centers it will pass through. In our example, we started with G major and ended with D major, creating a perfect fifth, one of the few intervals that create sequences that visit every note before repeating. So, incredibly, the epic progression passes through every major and minor chord exactly once before repeating, and these groups of major and minor chords form interlocking circles of fifths. We can also observe another incredible fact. Any 3 adjacent chords are diatonic, meaning that they can be found in the same key. This is why the progression sounds so smooth. But hold on, there's way more interesting things about this sequence. Let's list each tonal center that gets visited in order, starting with C major for simplicity. The next one is E minor, then G major, then B, D, F sharp, and A. Sound familiar? This pattern of notes is the standard extension of a major 7th chord, a major 13th chord, widely used in jazz. It appears here because the distance between tonal centers alternates by major and minor thirds, which is how chord extensions are often built. Indeed, if we begin our sequence on a minor chord, we end up building the extension of a minor chord as well. But still, it gets even more intriguing. Regular chord extensions end after the 13th because they just loop back to the root. But instead of hitting a C and repeating, A is followed by C sharp, and the chord progression continues, ascending by alternating major and minor thirds. Now, where have you seen this pattern before? Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably recognize the chord we're constructing as the C major 21, double sharp 47, sharp 45, double sharp 43, sharp 40 chord, created by stacking a bunch of major 7ths on top of each other. And indeed, the epic progression and this extended monstrosity of a chord are equivalent. All of the properties between these two structures are shared. And because this chord is associated with super ultra hyper mega meta Lydian, we should be able to find it somewhere in the epic sequence, right? And sure enough, in the top voice, we find the holy grail of impractical music theory itself, the super ultra hyper mega meta Lydian scale. When I first pulled the loose thread of this chord progression, I expected to find a neat harmonic pattern or some clever counterpoint, nothing else. Instead, I found a veritable Pascal's triangle of music theory, a chord progression that not only includes every major and minor chord, but encodes modern chord extensions and has the frivolous super ultra hyper mega meta Lydian as a melody, despite the progression's utility and presence in classical music. It certainly lives up to its name. Its extraordinary size, heroic sound, and inherent coolness truly embody every aspect of the word epic. If you'd like to see more videos about New Age, Jacob Collier-style lick-based, definitely real music theory, please consider subscribing.